Centers for Spiritual Living Diversity Inclusion Commission welcomes you to Black Lives Matter with our presenter, Reverend Michele Synegal.
We're starting, as you may know, to record these so that we can make them available for distribution. So what is our disclaimer? This webinar will be recorded for public distribution and therefore extends no expectation of confidentiality of the likeness, identity, or information shared by any of the presenters or participants. By registering and attending this webinar, you are acknowledging your awareness that you are being recorded and that this recording will be publicly distributed as deemed appropriate by the Centers for Spiritual Living's Diversity Inclusion Commission. So we are now recording. The other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is that, and it's on my first slide, so I'm going to share my slides. Let me get here. Is that we are going to do some breakout discussions this evening. However, Zoom does not record those discussions. So feel free to be candid and open and speak what's on your heart and on your mind. It's not recorded. Only main room discussions are recorded. So I just want to remind you all, if you could, stay muted until you are going to ask a question or make a comment, unmute, and then once that is done, then mute again, because that keeps down the background noise. If you don't want your video on, you can turn it off. If you want to be seen and seen everyone, then of course you would start video. You can also use the chat to communicate with us. I'm pretty attentive to the chat, and Charlie will be watching the chat as well. So if you have questions or comments that you want us to, of course, mention, then put those in the chat. And I know you all chatted up with each other as well. Let's see, if you have any other devices in your space, like your cell phone, your desktop phone, your landline, you may want to put those on mute or vibrate again so that we can maintain the quality of the experience. There's also a raise hand feature in Zoom. You'd have to click on the participant list, find your name, and there'll be two buttons. One will say mute, the next one will say more. Click on the more and it'll be raise hand. And so you can raise your hand. That's another way of getting our attention. We really do endeavor to have these be as interactive as possible, although we are working in this virtual space. So utilize the tools if you would. So what is tonight's discussion? Tonight's discussion is about Black Lives Matter. It's more than just a slogan. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that people have accurate information around what it is and what it isn't, some of the beliefs and practices and commitments of the organization to deepen our understanding. So the agenda shortly coming up, we'll have our opening prayer by Ayodele McClenny, religious science practitioner, and Reverend Rafe Ellis and I will give you a quick little recap of last night's fabulous webinar, because it actually is a great segue into tonight's. I actually have quotes from Reverend Dr. David Alexander, and Reverend Rafe will be quoting himself. Then we'll start with her story, as opposed to history, her story, Black Lives Matter, and then we'll take a look at some of the beliefs. And then one of the things that I want us to do is revisit our global vision. So you'll be put into breakout rooms to revisit that and have discussion around it. I have formed a discussion question for you all to entertain in your small groups. When we reconvene as a large group, if there's some reflections from that experience that folks would like to share, we will accommodate as many as we have time for. And then our closing prayer will be presented by our newest, one of our newest commissioners, Reverend Victoria Bombery. So, Ayo, if you could unmute and lead us in prayer, please.
Please join me in this affirming prayer. In the infinity of life where we are, all is perfect, whole, and complete. This sacred time together is safe and love-filled. Every question has an answer. Every answer is a prayer. Truly grateful vibrations leave this space and are returned as the world we know permeates love and peace in response. All who share this time and space with the Diversity and Inclusion Commission feel this love and are nourished by it. And together we envision a world that works for everyone. And so it is.
You're muted, Michele.
Trying to keep the background noise down. Thanks for reminding me. Reverend Rafe, I was turning it over to you, and I thought that you could, give us some salient points from your presentation last night, because I think as I said, it's a great segue into tonight's presentation.
So last night we looked at liberation through inclusion and really taking a different approach to spiritual independence, understanding that inclusion is the outcome of spiritual practice, that including is a practice that falls from a thought process that understands oneness, and the result of that is inclusion. We talked briefly about gaining an awareness that if we're starting with a container that we're wanting to include people to, that we've already missed the point, because true inclusion has no container. It is all. And then we looked at the difference between an individual application of spiritual principle and understanding that in oneness, everything that I do impacts the whole, and everything you do impacts the whole. And I'm just going to read my own quote from the article in the Science of Mind magazine, because it flowed out and it still makes sense. In oneness, your oppression is my oppression. Your fear is my fear. I may have a different body, but oneness does not afford me a not my problem exemption. And that really is this whole idea of liberation and oneness and spiritual practice, is understanding the depth of oneness. So that's what we talked about last night, and I really appreciate everyone who joined us. So back to you, Reverend Michele.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I'm actually going to give you all some quotes. And a lot of you were probably taking notes as well when Reverend Dr. David Alexander was speaking. He said that liberation theology is a solidarity with all of humanity. And he said science of mind is a form of liberation theology. He said because it lives at the intersection of philosophy and theology. And so he gave us a couple of explanations for theology and for philosophy. He said that theology is communal. And he said philosophy is personal. He went on to say that oneness is a principle of inclusivity, and it takes us to the deeper end of the pool. He was using a pool as an analogy, and he talked about the shallow end and the deep end. And so he said oneness is a principle of inclusivity, and it takes us to the deeper end of the pool. In oneness, we are inextricably bound to one another. There is no other. That's separation. And he said something really, really powerful. He said, we, and I'm inserting CSL, have the power to liberate all of humanity by thinking new thoughts. Now, what I'm going to do is expand upon that. Thinking new thoughts. However, thoughts are the antecedent or the causation in our terminology. And then there's the behavior that follows the thought. Those are the decisions that we make, the actions that we choose to undertake. And then, of course, we have effects or the consequences of our actions. So I'm sharing that with you because, of course, we are not telling you what to think, but hopefully tonight and last night, we have given you all something to think about. That's the goal and the objective. So with that said, I want to introduce you to the founders of Black Lives Matter. I also have to give a shout out to one of my colleagues at East Bay Church of Religious Science who sent me a fabulous article, and I am referencing that along with other materials, and that was Harriet who sent me that article. So thank you so much, I appreciate you. So they made the cover of Time magazine in 2013, and who are they? Patrice Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tomita. They are the creators of Black Lives Matter. So let me tell you a little bit about each of them. Alicia Garza from Oakland, California, is an Oakland activist. She posted a love letter to Black people on Facebook in 2013, telling them, our lives matter. Patrice Cullors turned it into a hashtag, hashtag Black Lives Matter. New York activist Opal Tomita built the digital platform for Black Lives Matter. A few days after Cullors called her friend Abdullah, and then she reached out to 30 others of her friends, and together they formed the first chapter of what is now a network of 16 chapters across North America. And now they also have gone global. However, that operates under Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. And the chair of that foundation is Cullors, Patrice Cullors. In 2014, the movement spread when Michael Brown, an unarmed Black 18-year-old, was shot by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. That's when the movement started to really take off. So a little bit about the organization. If you go to their website, they refer to this piece as her story. Because unbeknownst to me, until I started doing this research, I didn't know that the organizers were women. Because whenever I see something with regard to Black Lives Matter, oftentimes, like if it's a demonstration, oftentimes you see a male out front. And so I was very pleasantly surprised to know that women actually organized this movement. They created a Black-centered political will and movement building project called, and as I mentioned, hashtag Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention in a world where Black lives are systemically and intentionally targeted for demise. This comes from their website. It is an affirmation of Black folks' humanity and contributions to society and our resilience in the face of deadly oppression.
Her story. Initial goal of Black Lives Matter was to include women, queer, and trans people in the leadership of Black liberation movements. Historically, the leadership of Black liberation movements were mostly Black heterosexual, cisgender men. Hashtag BLM propelled the conversation around the state-sanctioned violence experienced by Tanisha Anderson, Maya Hall, Walter Scott, and Sandra Bland.
Venetia?
I am slide 8. We believe.
Oh, the numbers changed, so I'll go ahead and read this. Well, go ahead. Would you read this one? Because the numbers changed, sorry.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
To eradicate white supremacy and build local power, to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes, to combat and counter acts of violence, to create space for Black imagination and innovation centered in Black joy. We believe in an inclusive and spacious movement. We believe that in order to win and bring as many people with us along the way, we must move beyond the narrow nationalism that is prevalent in Black communities. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings all of us to the front. Our intention is to connect Black people around the world who have a shared desire for justice to act together in their communities.
Continued commitment to liberation for all Black people, healing ourselves and each other, co-creating alongside comrades, allies, and family, a culture where each person feels seen, heard, and supported. We acknowledge and respect differences and celebrate commonalities.
We work vigorously for freedom and justice for Black people, and by extension, all people. We intentionally build and nurture a beloved community that is bonded through a beautiful struggle that is restorative, not depleting. We are guided by the fact that all Black lives matter, regardless of actual or perceived sexual identity, gender expression, economic status, ability, disability, religious beliefs or disbeliefs, immigration status, or location.
Lynn, if you take the next one, please.
Okay. We make space for transgender brothers and sisters to participate and lead. We are self-reflective and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift Black trans folk, especially Black trans women, disproportionately impacted by trans antagonist violence. We build a space that affirms Black women and is free from sexism, misogyny, and environments that are men-centered. We make our spaces family-friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children.
Sheila, have you arrived as yet?
Yes, I have.
Next slide, please. Thank you.
We practice empathy. We engage comrades to learn about and connect with their context. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. We embody and practice justice, liberation, and peace in our engagements with one another.
So let's just pause for a moment, you all, to take that in. That is a lot.
It is.
It is a lot. It was a lot more than I ever imagined, as I said, until I started doing the research. So I'm really pleased that I pulled a short straw for this webinar. I wanted to thank Sheila Alexander Reed, one of the newest members to the Diversity Inclusion Commission. Lynn Daniels, religious science practitioner, also a diversity inclusion commissioner. Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards, a past chair of the Diversity Inclusion Commission. Iodeli McClinney, a religious science practitioner. Kim H. Walker, a religious science practitioner. And Reverend Venetia Wills Lefroy. Thank you all for supporting me tonight. So next up, I wanted us to revisit our global vision. And I have it here, you all. Rafe has put the link in the chat box. So if you want to click on it, because this is going to be the basis of your discussion in the small group activities. I think that it's a great opportunity for us to revisit, recommit, to reaffirm, or we might even have a change of heart. Yeah, you never know. But I think it's always important that we go back to our documents that define who we are and what we say we are about. Our global vision, a world that works for everyone. We envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which every person lives in alignment with his or her highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought. A world where every person discovers his or her own power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life. A world where this kinship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of spiritual wisdom and experience. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. We envision a world where each person has enough food, a home, and a sense of belonging, a world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement, and justice. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous, continuous sharing of these resources. We envision a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. We envision a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics. We envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. That's a lot too. So when I put you all in your breakout rooms, you may want to take this question down, because this is what you'll be discussing. With the current state of race relations in particular, because that's what we're dealing with mostly here, where are the opportunities at an individual, a center, and an organizational level to bring our global vision to fruition? I'm gonna leave that up so folks can take pictures of it. You can write it down. but that's what you'll be discussing in the small groups. So before I break us out, I'm going to stop sharing.
Can you put that in the chat, Michelle?
Sure, I can. Let me go back. See if I can. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to jump out of the slide presentation so I can copy and paste this into the chat. In the meantime, if you all have, have any comments, any questions, any reactions to anything that you saw relative to the beliefs, the practices, and the commitments of the Black Lives Matter movement, speak now. So let me, and anybody can open your mic and answer if you know the answer, while I endeavor to put that question in the chat. So Charlie, I'm gonna need you to call on folks while I do this.
Okay, just unmute yourself and start talking.
That was easy. So let me go.
I just wanted to say, in a recent conversation with a very conservative friend of mine, DAR, Trump supporter, MAGA, whatever, she said she had a friend who said she liked Black Lives Matter in lowercase, but in the uppercase, it was a Marxist organization. And I didn't have any idea where that came from until I saw the word comrade twice. And I'm sure that pressed that button, that, the commie button got pressed. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is part of what we're up against here, folks.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, it was comrade, not communist, but it was a trigger. Right. Anybody else have anything you want to say before I let you loose and put you into discussion groups? And when you're in those discussion groups, I'm going to ask you to identify a person who will report out on your behalf in response to the question, with the current state of race relations in our society, where are the opportunities at an individual, center, and organizational level to bring our global vision to fruition? Okay, so you all want to work. That's good. That's good for me. I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms, and we're going to give you all about, I have a hand up first. Deborah Ellis, if you could unmute, you have a comment or a question?
Let's see if I can find her.
All you have to do, I'll type in her name, and then that's how you find her. Charlie, there she is. It's allowing me to ask you to unmute. You should be able to do it now, Deborah.
Read again what we have to do.
Michelle?
She was
Yes.
just asking you to read again the question for the groups and what we were to do in the groups.
Oh, terrific, terrific.
I'm translating now.
Thank you. All right, so in your discussion groups, you've had an opportunity to hear about what Black Lives Matter believes, what their practices are, what their commitments are. You've also had an opportunity to revisit our global vision. So the question is, with the current state of race relations in our society, where are the opportunities at an individual, center, and organizational level to bring our global vision to fruition? So that's the discussion. Let's see. Okay, so is everybody clear? All right, it's work time, because sometimes you have to make decisions. You have to and the decision can be either way. Sometimes you have to move beyond just treatment. It's treatment and moving one's feet. The opportunity is calling us in, you all. We have 20 minutes for the breakout rooms. Once we start the timer, we will have 20 minutes. So what I want you to think about and to discuss with each other is, what comes up for you with regard to what's going on in our society, what it is that we say we are up to and what we are about as a movement. I'm meeting Centers for Spiritual Living. And so what are some ideas around what you can do at the individual level? What are some ideas of what you can do at the center level? What are some ideas that we can do at the organizational level to bring a world that works for everyone to fruition? So that is the task that is before you. Everybody clear?
Yes, may I say one thing?
Certainly.
Since this began with inclusion, and it's always good to remember inclusion, whoever represents the group and gives the thoughts and ideas of the group, to please make sure they include the group's ideas. Sometimes people take it as a platform for themselves, and this is about being inclusive of your group and representing them. So it's an opportunity to also express oneness by doing that. Thank you.
All righty. Okay, I'm going to also, I have a request to put the BLM slides, attach them to the chat. So I'll be working on that as well. I believe it'll be visible to you when you're in your breakouts. So I'm going to cut you loose and let you all go to work, because we do want to have time at the end to hear your ideas, your suggestions, your comments, your positions, whatever it is you feel called to share. All right, go to work. I'll see you all in 20 minutes. So welcome back, everybody. Do you appreciate that I gave you 5 extra minutes? You probably needed more time, I know, but I wanted to make sure that we could hear from as many of you as possible. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top and take one group and hear that report out, breakout room 1. That was with D. Jacqueline and Lauren, Mary, Patricia, and Reverend Jill Gwen. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom, because I don't want the people at the bottom to be left out. And then, so the last group would be, and they would be next in the queue because they're last, Harriet Johnson, Hobbit, Melinda, and Steve. Then I'm going to go back up to 2. I'm going to alternate. So we'll just kind of close into the center. Usually you start at the top, the bottom gets left off. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more democratic. All righty, so let's start with the top of the list, breakout room number 1. Do you all have a person who's going to report out? What did you all talk about?
So we talked in general. Our conversation was about what it is that we are currently doing, and then woven through that were some suggestions about things that can be done. The bullet points that came out, Mary threw into the room the importance of getting out into the public, working with the legislature, voting, noting what candidates stand for, and then voting accordingly by principle, if you will. Reverend Patricia, who's in Sacramento, talked about the massive personal education that she's been doing. She spends 2 to 3 hours a day. She wants to start a white space group, meaning a place where whites can come together and begin to liberate selves. We also refer to those as affinity groups. She recognizes the systemic biases, and she actually, and 2 of the people in our group actually had their moment of their big aha after Ferguson. which I thought was important to throw in to mention. They have a social action committee already in existence at their center, and they mostly work with empowering youth. She also recommended a white ally boot camp that the Unitarian community does. Reverend Jill, who joins us originally from Agape, she also, along with Patricia, is currently enrolled in the white fragility class that Reverend Elizabeth is doing. She's involved with other communities, and this is also a recommendation that we reach out as individual centers to other communities and see what it is that they're doing and where we can work with them. Lauren came back and she kind of dittoed that same idea of working with other communities. Lauren is at Las Vegas, and she gave a great shout out to her ministers, to Cheryl and Stacy. And again, after Ferguson, she started doing research and doing more reading. The center did read the white supremacy book that CSL has just been doing. And again, I think I just said it, there's the idea of connecting with other centers. So they also connected with CSL Southern Nevada, that's Reverend Marquita. Change the conversation in her community. I thought that was a real nugget there. And be mindful about when to speak up. And this touches on the thing that Reverend David talked about a little bit last night in terms of have a soft approach. Give people space to say what it is that's up for them, and then see where the common values are. And I invited us to consider more broadly seeing each other, actually seeing who we are and engaging in ways that we get to know people better, that we get to have the conversation, even when we're in an all-white center, because of that idea that until all of us are free, none of us are free, that we can look at our global vision and look at what is going on in the world and create workshops, both inside our centers and specifically also for the communities in which we reside, which is a way both of putting ourselves as CSL out into the world, as well as having this conversation from a CSL world that works for everyone centered space. I am complete.
Thank you so much for that, you all. And I'm gonna make a request, and what that request is too, if you all don't mind emailing me all of your wonderful ideas and thoughts, I'd like to compile a document, and so that we can have it and present it to our leadership. So I'm making that request of every group leader to send me your notes. Also, you all, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you all, and I'm going to start timing you, 2 to 3 minutes for your presentations. Thank you. All righty, so let's go. To the bottom, Harriet Johnson, Hobbit, Melinda, and Steve. Who's going to report out for you all? Then I'll go back to the top.
This is Harriet, and I'm going to report out for room 22. Okay, so we have representation from Denver, Alaska, Fort Lauderdale, and Oakland, California. And some of our thoughts were the fact that in some of these areas, there is not a lot of diversity in terms of who's attending their centers, but everyone understands that they're open. They're open to having others attend, and the challenge is in attracting them and not targeting people, but being open and receptive to them attending and finding ways to encourage that. Let's see, in Denver, they have had people of color who were speakers. For example, Reverend Cynthia James has been there speaking, and they've attracted more people of color at those times, but the attendance has gone up and down. So they want to do more in terms of attracting people. Let's see, Hobbit's Church in Fort Lauderdale, they have quite a few Black people in leadership there. Their youth director is a person of color, but they aren't attracting very many people of color in terms of their congregants either. And so she's feeling that they need to be more broadly involved in the community. And that might attract more people when they see their heart out in the community serving. That could make a difference. She also feels that they need to be more focused in their community outreach. More specific kinds of things that they might be involved in. She mentioned that there was a large interest in the immigration problems we were having and the children being removed from their parents, and that rallied people to get more involved. And so with more focused community outreach, that could be a big attractor. She also mentioned they have a youth program, and so teaching children, of course, about diversity and inclusion is key as well, starting with the kids and making sure that they're educated about these matters. Let's see, Melinda mentioned that her church, which is Arizona, but she's in Alaska right now, she mentioned that it's mostly seniors. It's a retired congregation. And so there's like a road that's kind of between their church and other churches, or the community on the other side of the road. So it's a big job to try to attract people, and especially more younger people even, into their center. So they are involved with the Amado Youth Alliance, and so there is some activity there. But the adults in this community don't speak English, so that is another challenge. And most of them have a Christian background. So they're feeling one key program that they do offer there, though, is that they have a program with doctors and dentists go to the Mexican border and actually provide medical care to people. And Melinda feels that education and exposure are huge areas where they can improve.
Well, Harriet, your time is up, so I'm going to ask you if you would send me your notes. And thank you, D. Jacqueline, for putting my email address in the chat box, you all. As you all have something valuable to say and to contribute. I want to capture it. And so we have finite time tonight. Breakout room 2 is up next. We had Barbara B., we had Carla, Jennifer, Karen, and Linda.
I think I'm supposed to speak. So we also were from all over the country. There was someone from Kansas, someone from Utah, Oakland, I think Denver, and then I'm in Southern California. And we talked mostly about, on the individual and the center level, what things that people could do. And a couple of the centers were places where there was very little diversity and mostly, if not all, white congregation. And so we talked about individually how important it is to educate ourselves and to understand that this is our responsibility to, in terms of, even if there's a white congregation, that it's our responsibility to understand the issues and what's going on, and to really deeply sort of invest in our own education about the topics that are, in the zeitgeist right now, and have been there for over 400 years and not addressed fully. And to recognize that this is our problem. It's not someone else's problem, it's our problem. It was created by the history of our country, and to really inform ourselves about that. So I think all of us were in agreement that individual education and sharing resources with each other and making resources available and opportunities available to have discussions. Some of us were leading book circles or facilitating book circles already, or involved in some kind of discussion group or book group or that kind of thing. And so that kind of sharing of information and education and resources is really key. We also thought that, we talked about some of the things that we could do to promote and share voices that aren't normally heard, especially in communities where there is not a lot of diversity, and to do that in such a way that it's not it's sort of countering what we see on the news and what we see in media, which is a very often dehumanizing or often, not full picture of Black lives in this country, and to really sort of find ways to highlight and promote and sort of contrast with that, image that often is out there in the collective because of media and because of film and books and everything else. And so to promote those voices and that haven't been heard as much, and to promote just celebrating Black joy and lives, the complexity, the wholeness of Black lives.
Thank you, Jennifer. You're out of time.
Okay.
So can you you capture those notes and send them to me, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. The next group, BJ King, Joyce Dufala, I know that name, Nancy and Sue. Breakout room 21.
Oh, I was so hoping I'd be the very last one and we were out of time.
I tricked you tonight. I went from the bottom up.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So we had a great conversation with each one of the people that were in the group, and we just found out that most of them are reading and have done book studies and so forth on white supremacy. We had someone from Loveland, and that was Nancy, and she's part of the Justice Ministry and Elderly Care. Get rid of the hidden beliefs is one of the things that we had spoken about, and look more at inclusive global visions and print where it can be seen in other places, not just in meetings like tonight. But I don't even know if I've ever heard of the global vision there that we read tonight. Suggestions for, well, let me go down here. From Santa Rosa, again, they're doing more book studies, and they did ask their congregation to talk about what can the center do to get some ideas of other things that could be done, and to develop more educational groups online, and that everybody is welcome to log in to Santa Rosa, cslsantarosa.org, to find out what classes they are having. In Salt Lake City, we had Sue from Salt Lake City, and they are looking at how to be more inclusive and to expand and get to know other cultures and so forth, and visit. A lot of the churches around Salt Lake City are doing a lot more work about this, and they're open to welcoming more people. They're a small church, but welcoming more people in. And she says, we're strong and we're mighty, but we're small. But they're welcoming more people in, and then they're going to be visiting other organizations to get more ideas. In San Jose, I am putting together a book study on how to be an anti-racist, and that came from a request from one of our ministers and requested me to lead it. And so I've got the books now, so I've got to put together a plan, and then also to reconstruct our diversity and inclusion group. But I just can't do both, so I'm going to try to find somebody who can help. One of the biggest things was to get home office putting out more information on the diversity, on the our global vision, a world that works for everyone, and to have a place where people can go to look for the names of books, the websites that they can look at, quotes, and anything that can help all people, especially Caucasians, because so many of us say, well, I don't know where to look. And things that are on the websites, because sometimes there's so much on the website that you don't know exactly what to look for. And so that was our big suggestion from home office, is to have home office, and these are our recommendations or these are our suggestions, and we start with the global vision printed out where everybody can see it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And you were like right on time. You managed that time well. I appreciate you. And I also want to remind you all, if you go to Facebook, the Diversity Inclusion Commission has a resource page, just resources. And Sharon keeps that updated. So look there. And if you have any challenges finding it, then shoot me an email and I'll make sure that Sharon gets information to you on how to find it specifically.
What was it called?
It is the I believe, who knows better than I do, because I don't know.
Rafe put it in the chat box.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you, Rafe. Yay! Diversity Inclusion Commission resource page. That's what it's called. Yay! Oh, and Sharon's here, so Sharon put it in there as well. Yay! All the bases are covered. Thank you all. All righty. Next up, we have Lonnie, Howard. We have Lynn, Reverend Brenda, and Ron. Anybody going to report out from breakout room 3?
That's me. Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing is individual education for us as white people to understand how racism is systemic and white supremacy is systemic in our government, in our politics, in our economy, in our healthcare, in all of these areas, how it is present everywhere. And so educating ourselves about that. And so I was talking about the 21-day equity habit challenge, which is a great website with lots of resources. I'm also participating in the ministers' Me and White Supremacy action, and also reading White Fragility, and seeing lots of videos and lots of really great people being interviewed these days. It's really up, it's in the consciousness, it's really coming to the fore. And then Bob talked about how he was talking to friends and people of color. He talked about an individual experience he had of watching someone get persecuted because they were Native American in North Carolina, and what happened there. And so he talked about talking to people of color and listening to them about their experiences and to try to understand individually. And then Reverend Brenda said, well, it's nice to get individual, but we really need to do something more as an organization, that it's not enough for the individuals to learn, we have to do something. And so we should be having petition drives, and we should have, like, on this day, everybody call their congressman, their senator, whatever, calling them out and saying, demanding action on police reform, education reform, health disparities, all of these areas that we know are involved in this, and that we need to really have action items for everyone, and just organize the whole center, and maybe all the centers at once to really take that forward. 400,000 people all connecting at once. And she was talking about the service day that's coming up. And instead of each individual center doing service days, in their own community, we would have something that we do as an organization as part of that as well. And that, getting the ramping up, doing something together to dismantle the mechanisms of racism or implicit bias that are governing us. And she also said, as centers, we need to ramp up our outreach and look at, and talk about what oppression looks like through the eyes of another. She doesn't hear people in church talking about her intense desire to be free and to live a safe life in her body as a person of color. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that really needs to be talked about. And then Lynn was talking about, that inclusion is not about having a container, it's about action. It's about inclusion as an action. And that sometimes people are hesitant to admit they have this implicit bias because of fear of rejection and because of the way that their organization, their family, their culture is, that they, feel that they're stepping outside of who they are. And that often there's a political spiritual separation. It's like, okay, well, here's my spiritual over here. Here's my political. And somehow, they're not coming together. We have to act on our principles in our politics, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you, Lonnie. And
Okay.
really, you all, I encourage you all, please send me all of this information. This is so helpful. It's like, doing little mini focus groups,
Right.
around what some of our interests are, our desires are, our needs are, so that we can support you in those efforts. All right, next up, we've got breakout room 20. C, is that Caver? We have Dana, we have Marie, and Renee. So who's speaking for that group?
Me, I'm Renee.
Okay.
We were from Boston, Oregon, Oakland, and the Living Aligned Virtual Center. One of the things that we thought would like the national organization to help us with is to connect us with each other so that we get what we're getting tonight, which is what are other people doing so we're not all trying to reinvent the wheel. This is helpful in anything that could help with that, to connect us with each other. Also, the virtual Living Aligned, they have sacred conversations every Tuesday on topics of the week, just conversations. And they also are starting a series of webinars on both pandemics, the health pandemic and the social pandemic. One of the ideas that we had that we could do as individuals was to have conversations with people who perhaps didn't see things the way we saw things, and to instead of trying to convince them, listen to them, ask them open-ended questions to help them hear themselves and just keep them going deeper. Let's see. In Oregon, we've had some book studies, and we had lots of suggestions for book studies. And so we have a small group of people. Now we're working to push that out in the rest of the community. And
Awesome.
so all of your ideas will help that. We're very aware that it takes a lot of education, because those of us who've been in two book studies have had some education, and it's taken a lot to get where we are, and we need to move gently but move forward with the rest of the people in our community. Seeing the global vision, we say a world that works for everyone at every service, to see how we can make that real.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Renee. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's try to get at least 2 more in, you all. And as I said, I'm really encouraging you all to send in your ideas from your group if we don't have an opportunity to hear everybody's tonight. And I just had a suggestion, is that we post this to the diversity inclusion resource page, all of your information. So we absolutely can do that. So this is not for naught, this is for real. Okay. All righty. So let's see who is up next. What about Barbara Harrison, Donna Brown, Kaleem, Teresa? That was breakout group 4.
Yes.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Reverend Michele. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. Through our discussion, one of the things that we realized is that on a personal level, there's a lot of undoing of the stories that we've learned all our lives in order to come to terms to where we are so that we can move forward and express this oneness. So some of us express the need of the personal work that has to be done on a personal level to, as many of us have many stories that we've been taught over and over that have contributed to the systemic racism that we don't even realize that is occurring. So that was a feeling that was expressed, a comment from that was expressed. Also that we recognize the oneness, so it goes beyond a personal level for our oneness. It's a oneness on a social justice action that, as someone expressed, I think just earlier, on a personal and a political, it has to come together, this oneness. It's not separate issues as we move into a oneness. It's also expressed how they felt that on Centers of Spiritual Living has incorporated a lot of diversity, especially in the Science of Mind magazine, not waiting for a special occasion of like Black History Month, but the contributors and the authors have a diverse background, whether it be ethnicity or gender. It has expanded much to be more inclusive. And we talked a little about the similarity of the Science of Center of Spiritual Living goals, vision statement, and Black Lives Matter, how there is a similarity and overlap, and that we both, but the visions are saying all persons, working for the good of all persons, and be including all persons regardless of gender, ethnicity, age. That was part of Black Lives Matter. Is also part of goals of the Centers for Spiritual Living, and to go beyond our local and step out into a more global stand, and especially in the Black communities, going beyond our neighborhoods, nationalism.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Donna. Appreciate that. You all, we're out of time, and I really do want to capture all your comments. So please, we're going to send you an email reminding you that you agree. Some of you at least gave me some kind of acknowledgement that you would send me your information, because I would like to compile it and then post it on our Facebook resource page. So I want to close with these words, and these are the words of Patrice Cullors, one of the organizers of Black Lives Matter. She says, "This movement is led, envisioned, and directed by Black women. Many are queer, moms, and we started this work because we wanted our children to survive. We are laying the groundwork and foundation for a new world." So thank you all for your time, your attention, and your participation. We're going to allow the conversations to continue. We will support you as best we can. Reach out to the Diversity and Inclusion Commission. We are here to be of assistance. Please visit our Facebook page. There are resources there. There are also daily posts that might be of interest to you. So thank you all. I'm gonna leave the meeting open. We can say goodbye, but I'll leave it open for a few minutes because there's a lot of activity in the chat, and we are recording, and so the chat will be recorded as well. So if there's some information you want to send our way, you can put it in the chat. So thank you all so much. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the divinity in you. And so it is. Amen. Thank you.